Now, I was raised in the church. We'd go sometimes 3 times a week. We prayed before the meals, we prayed before bed. Mom quoted scripture to me every time I got in trouble. I knew that it mattered, I just didn't know how. It never occurred to me that I was supposed to actually read the Bible myself. Nobody told me not to, it just never came up. I mean, church told me what it said. Mom did too. Now, eventually, a guy I worked with called me out on it. He goes, if you're going to claim to be a Christian, you got to read the book of a Christian. So I did. And it didn't say what I thought it said. Now, I'd lived through decades of hearing it quoted, and I still had it wrong. But what I eventually realized was that reading the Bible was only one part of Christian discipline. The harder part was learning what to do with what I read when my feelings, my own thinking, and the people around me kept pulling me in a different direction. That's the part nobody had ever explained clearly to me. Now, I can't be the only one who felt that gap. So let's fix that. So, what is Christian discipline? I like to break things down, so let's break it down. Christian is a follower of Christ, and discipline means to learn or be taught. So Christian discipline is learning how to follow, trust, and live out the will of God while completely surrounded by people who are either partially or completely rejecting that. That's it. But let's go deeper on discipline. Every discipline has 3 parts. First, there's a teacher. I mean, who are you learning from? Second, there's the information, which is what are you learning? And third, there's the purpose. Why are you learning that information? What do you intend on doing with it? Every discipline has all 3. Christian discipline is no different. So let's break it down even more. A teacher would be like an authority, the source where the information comes from. So a teacher is an authority, but I'm just going to say teacher. And whether you realize it or not, you have 3 possible teachers every day. The first teacher would be like your feelings. I knew someone once who depended on feelings as their primary source of information. Something would happen and there were 10 different ways that the thing could have been taken, but she would pick the worst possible one and that became the truth. Not just that's how it felt, but that's the real thing that actually happened as far as she was concerned. Now, if feelings are your primary teacher, you tend to react first. That's just how it works. Now, the second teacher is yourself, and I'm just going to call it self. Self is more complicated. It searches inward through what you already know, then outward through what other people claim to know, and it compares the two before you make a decision. Now, in 40 years of study in martial arts, I learned something about emotions and fighting. The best emotion to have in a fight is no emotion. I can be in the middle of something very aggressive, even violent, and feel nothing while it's happening. Then later, once I've weighed it all out and looked for the lesson, I can decide how I feel about it then. Self handles outside information the same way, like news, social media, doctors, lawyers. I personally don't automatically believe any of it or them because I know it's coming from a fallible human with a bias or either an agenda. So I wait. I compare it to what I already know. I look at multiple sources, and whatever repeats consistently across all of them is the closest thing to accurate that I'm ever going to get. If self is your primary teacher, you compare, evaluate, and decide. And sometimes people even force a reaction so they can get the information faster. They call that making it happen. Then there's God, teacher number 3. Now, God designed everything, and He saw that it was good. Then man wrecked all the good. But God gave us a way back to His design. He gave us things that work and things that don't work based on our actual human nature. They're not like arbitrary rules, they're wisdom. And wisdom is the study of things that don't change. And that's the real difference. Feelings change second by second. Self's perspective can change, the narrative can change, the source of the information can change, but God's information never changes. The reliability never changes. So there's 3 teachers, but only one of them stays the same all the time. Which teacher has the most influence over you? Are your feelings bigger and louder than God? And I'm not talking about in theory, I'm talking about in practice. Like God says to forgive, but anger says don't. Give them a throat punch. God says tell the truth, but fear says you're going to lose something if you tell the truth. God didn't change, His Word didn't change, but your feelings did. If your feelings win that argument more than God does, then they're bigger than God to you. And I'm not trying to insult you, that's just what's actually happening. So here's the second question. Do you handle everything yourself? Are you in total control? Do you depend on your thinking so much that you never stop to consider God's will? I mean, self doesn't usually fight God, it just sort of leaves Him out. So which one is bigger for you, your feelings or God? Your own thinking or God? If self or feelings are bigger than God, then you're making all the noise around you louder. Now here's what I mean by noise. Feelings react to something. Self evaluates something. But what is the something? Could it be people? It could be your mom, your dad, a store clerk, a teacher, a friend, someone who cut you off in traffic, a policy change made by somebody at your kid's school that made your whole day inconvenient. People do or say something and that gives you something to react to or plan around or scheme about. That's the noise. It's noise because people are constantly generating it and you're constantly responding to it with feelings or with self or both. Here's the other side of the coin that should humble you just a little bit. From their perspective, you're the noise. You're the one they're reacting to. You're the person who said the thing, cut them off, or made their day inconvenient. You got to remember, you are special, just like everybody else. So here's the actual test hiding inside all that noise. You can look at every one of those moments as a pain in the ass. Someone being rude or someone taking advantage of you, something in your way. And if that's all it is to you, that's all you'll ever learn from it. You'll only ever learn how annoying people are. Or you can look at it as an opportunity, a chance to notice right there in that exact moment what you actually listen to the most, your emotions or yourself. Or is there room in that same instance to stop before you react, before you scheme, and at least consider God first? Now I call that a pivot point. That pivot point, the half second between the noise and your response, that's where the test actually lives. You're learning to choose your teacher before you choose your response. Instead of just reacting to the moment, you could ask yourself a question. Something like, what's the most loving thing I could do right now and expect nothing back in return? Or what could I do that benefits the most people around me without expecting anything in return? That's not just a nice sentiment, that's the discipline. That's what quiets the noise long enough for you to actually hear the third teacher. That would be God. Let me show you what I mean. God gave me a gift. I thought it was skill in the martial arts, but it was not martial arts. It was teaching. Martial arts just happened to be the tool I used to teach people about character. Now, if I was going to teach martial arts, that meant I had to own a martial arts school. But my calling wasn't to sit in an office all day running a business. My calling was to be out on the floor teaching. And that's where the noise started. I had one parent whose favorite phrase was, you need to do this, you need to do that. She said it so much it became a joke around the school with me and the other staff. We'd imitate her. What she didn't know was that she was not the only one telling me what I need to do. I mean, my wife had ideas, other parents had ideas. At any given time, there were probably 10 people telling me how to run my business better. Now that created two completely different pivot points. The first one was about my calling. Every suggestion forced me to ask, would following through with this, would it help me fulfill what I believe God called me to do, or would it pull me away from it? I mean, some of the ideas were probably good business ideas, but good business was not my ultimate mission. Teaching was. My calling became the filter for every suggestion, all the noise. Then came the second pivot point. Even if I decided not to follow their advice, how was I going to treat the person that gave me the advice? Now, earlier in my career, I failed that test. I'd react to those people by saying, cool, how long have you been a black belt? Oh, you're not one? How many martial arts schools have you run? Also none. Then shut the hell up. Now looking back, that was ego, also known as self. But as I got closer to God, the noise didn't stop, the suggestions didn't stop, those pivot points didn't stop, but I changed. Instead of seeing interruptions or distractions, I started seeing people. People doing people stuff. People who genuinely cared and they wanted to help, and people who felt honored that I would even listen to them. So I started to smile and thank them. I let them speak, not because every idea was right, but because every person still deserved to be treated the way God wanted me to treat people. That's where all the noise came from. It wasn't from bad people, it's just people doing people stuff all day, every day. Each one pulling at you just a little in a different direction. That's Christian discipline. It was one conversation, two pivot points. You can stay faithful to your calling and stay faithful to your character. You don't have to sacrifice one to protect the other. Now, Christian discipline is, like I stated earlier, learning how to follow, trust, love, and live out the will of God while completely surrounded by people who either partially or completely reject that. That's still the definition. But now you know what makes it so hard. And you know that you have three teachers every single day. You have feelings, self, and God. Feelings change second by second. Self's perspective can change, the source can change, the narrative can change. Only one teacher never changes. So ask yourself the question again, which one is bigger for you? Is it your feelings or God, or your own thinking or God? Whatever the answer is, that's the noise that's winning. People everywhere all day giving you something to react to. And remember, for them, you're the noise too. I know you think you're different and special, but well, you are special, just like everybody else. In every one of those moments, you're not just choosing a response, you're choosing your teacher first. And I learned that in the smallest moments of my life. A parent with a phrase that became a joke, a room full of people who all believed they had special access to me. Every one of those moments split into two pivot points. Was I staying faithful to what I believed I was called to do? And was I staying faithful to who I was called to be while I did it? You don't have to sacrifice one to protect the other. Here's the truest way I can say it, make it even easier. As a human, you have what you want to do or say to people. You know what you should do or say to people, but what matters is what you actually do. Christian discipline doesn't live in the wanting, and it doesn't live in the knowing what to do. It lives in the actually do, the actions. That's Christian discipline.